Okay. All right, so where, right here?
Yeah, just anywhere over here.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Danielle Walker. I'm the We the People Board Secretary. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. I'm going to open us up in prayer and the pledge. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for the freedom that you've given us. Thank you for this country. Thank you for these people who are here just to learn and because they care about freedom. I just thank you so much for the outpouring of your spirit in Asbury, and I pray for that to be happening in our community too, Lord, that this is just a flame that you're just starting to fan, and that we'll see it spread across our country, across our town, that our families would be impacted by it for the better, and that we would come to know you more, Lord. We just thank you for this evening. We pray that all that we do and say would bring you honor, and I pray for your wisdom, that you would give us just insight to know how to impact our community for the positive. In your son Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'll read our scripture. It says, it's 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and forgive their sin and heal their land. And the vision of We the People is that we stand united to preserve the God-given rights secured in our Constitution and protected in the Bill of Rights for future generations. The mission is to instill our community in the spirit of the Constitution by providing access to resources and information, by empowering citizens to take action, and by holding elected officials accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. My name is Marina Pizzolatto. I am also on the board. I kind of hate to say that I'm board president because I feel like everybody on the board is president. We have an amazing team, and we help each other. There's no jealousies or envies or anything. Everybody's just on the same page and wanting the same thing. So I want to welcome you tonight, and to begin with, we would like to honor any veterans that may be here. If you are a veteran, could you please stand up? And then next, we would like to recognize elected officials. Miss Beryl Amity is here. She's a true patriot. Y'all know her. And then lastly, there's something else. Let's see, elected officials. I can't remember the other one. Veterans we did. That's it then? Okay. Well then, I want to welcome y'all and thank you for being here. I know your time is precious, and if you've taken time out on a Thursday night to be here, then you're probably like-minded. You're aware that there's some crazy stuff going on in the world right now, and you don't like it, and you want to stand strong against it, and you're in a great place for that because our organization seeks truth, and we rely on God to guide us. So if those are two things that you're kind of looking for, and then most of us are standing strong for our Constitution for future generations. So if you fit into that category, and if you want to be with a bunch of like-minded people that just love each other and love what we're doing. In fact, tonight, one of you came up and said, thank you for what you're doing. My response was, I don't need thanks because this is such a passion for us. And when you're doing what God calls you to do, you don't get tired, you don't get weary, We just want to keep on going, and I know this is a mission that God has called each of us to. So I would like to share something with you. It's something that I have shared before at a meeting. This person shares it so much, says it so much better than I do. So I'm going to play this.
When I have the courage to say there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which evil must not advance. He would go on to say that evil is powerless if the good are unafraid. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth. But we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness. We're mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose this war, and in so doing lose this great way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those that had the most to lose did the least to prevent it from happening. Well, I think it's high time now that we ask ourselves if we still even know the freedoms that were intended for us by our founding fathers. Every generation of Americans needs to know that freedom exists, not to do
A lot of information. We have a wonderful speaker, but before we introduce him, there's a couple of things about our organization that we want to share. Sherry, you and April are up first.
Thanks for coming. April and I just want to kind of just put a plug in for the fundraising of We the People by You chapter. April makes it fun, not fund. So thank God for April. So we have some things in the back. If y'all want to donate or give or buy or whatever, please feel free and welcome. No pressure. But we just wanted to talk about something that we recently did that's sort of hits the mark of what we're trying to do. And we have some fellow Elks here too. So we kind of teamed up with the Elks Club as We the People by You. And I'm the chair. I'm also an Elk. I'm chair of the Americanism Committee. And so every year the Elks does an essay contest that goes into the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And the kids write an essay. And every year it's a different thing. This year is What is My American Dream? Hey, Al's mom. Used to have her little boy with 3 in the daycare, huh? Anyway, I like kids. So, this year we had the essay contest, and we had 12 kids that were picked for just making outstanding essays. And then we had one child that wrote an essay that was especially good. It was about food banks and what his dream would be to see the needs of children met. So he was picked, and the Elks Club and We the People also awarded these kids with cash awards, and we also gave awards to local food banks. The Elks Club provided like $4,000, and this young man was able to give a check for $4,000 to a local food bank. So we have a photo album. If y'all want to look at what we're doing, these are one of the things that we're touching on, bringing the Constitution and Americanism into our schools and our community.
And I want to especially thank Sherry Blanchard because she put this whole thing together with the Elks, but she did the majority of the work. She reached out to schools in the community, every school, and if you get a chance, look at this and you're going to see how many kids participated and their dream, their American dream, just
300 essays were written. So that's 300 kids that even though they didn't get a cash award maybe, they had to sit down and think about what it is to be an American. It was awesome. And We the People by You donated $400 plus some other things just to make this happen. So this was an awesome thing.
that's okay. You're good at it. All right, so I'm gonna hand this. Y'all can just maybe look through it. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Elle.
Do we have any fundraisers coming up?
Ma'am.
Do we have any fundraisers coming up? Yeah, but
Hey everybody, Vicki Cluche. I'm on the board of We the People. Thank y'all for being here. I am the chair over the school committee. So if everybody that's on the school committee, our team would just come up and come on up. There's some people that are not here, but those that are here, we appreciate it so much. So there are several arms that we the people deal with, all have to do with honoring the Constitution and citizens' rights, children's rights. And so I just want to fill you in on the latest item that we have spoken about at the Lafourche and Terrebonne Parish school boards. And the purpose of speaking to them is to educate and inform them of things that are happening that they need to be aware of and may not be aware of, so they can be prepared in most cases to say, no, we're not going to do that, government. We're not going to do that to our kids. And our focus is to just really protect our children. There's a lot of insidious things that y'all know that are in the public schools. And that filters, your kids may not go to public school, but what happens in public schools filters into every other area of life. And so we had one of our team members did a presentation on social emotional learning. If you're not familiar with that, it sounds really good, but at the heart of it, it's basically teaching our kids to focus on social injustice and racism. And so we spoke out about that in an informative way, not pointing fingers. We don't do that. But we do want to get in front of people to let them know what the truth is. And thankfully, our school boards have allowed us to do that. The other presentation that we made recently is regarding a CDC initiative that, what does the CDC have to do with public schools? Education? I thought it was disease control, but a little overreach. But anyway, my phone won't go up. Anyway, so what this was a self-assessment tool, like a survey that the CDC is marketing and recommending to school personnel, including nurses, to assess the inclusivity of LGBTQ in their classrooms, in their schools. And what we made clear to them is we love and support every child. That is the heart of God. What we are against is perversion and damage to our children. That is also the heart of God. And so we have samples of what we presented on the back table with the red tablecloth. I encourage you just to go take a look if you would like. If there's enough, you can bring one home with you. But the CDC survey is like 32 pages long, so I think I only brought 2 of those. So I just thank all of you who watch. A lot of you, I feel like you're watching from online. I want to encourage you to come out to school board meetings. Sometimes they're really boring, but we are establishing a presence at the school districts so they know people care and people are watching. And then a lot of times parents are afraid to speak up because they don't want retribution for their children, or teachers are sometimes afraid of losing their job or being targeted. And so we say, well, we'll speak up for you. We'll be there. So we need to add one person to our team tonight before we go home. So if you're that person where this is touching your heart and you would love to be a part of that, see Debbie, she has a sign-in. I have another sign-in. All you gotta do is put your name, and we'd like to tell you more about it so that we can consider and see if that would be a good fit for you. So I just need one solid member tonight, okay? Before we go home. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much. I love her tactics. They're wonderful. This committee does amazing work. I'm so impressed with them. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a combination report from the networking committee and also from the election integrity committee. We have been working with Randy Russ and John Scanlon. We had a town hall not this past January, the January before, where they presented a lot of information. Kyle Ordoin was at that town hall. He announced there that he was removing Louisiana from ERIC. If you don't know what that is, that's a George Soros funded organization that their purpose is to remove people who shouldn't be on the voter rolls, which is kind of an oxymoron there, George Soros doing that. But anyway, so we continued working with Randy Russ and John Scanlon, and we had them come down and speak to us, and where that went was we decided to canvass Terrebonne Parish and Lafourche Parish. So we started the canvassing of Terrebonne Parish. And where the networking committee comes in, that's a committee that is comprised of some of our members. And what we've done so far is we've met in Terrebonne Parish with our elected officials. We've met with our sheriff, with our police chief, with our parish president, and with our district attorney. And we let all four of them know what we were doing, that we were going to canvass. And I will say this, Terrebonne Parish, from our perspective, is so blessed to have the leadership that we have. They all prayed with us. They were all 100% behind what we were doing. So we had, and I don't think that's the case in every parish. So the chief of police and the sheriff let their people know that we were going to be canvassing in case anybody called and complained about it, or in case we needed anything. So be thankful that Terrebonne Parish is like that, and we hope to find the same in Lafourche Parish. But we're not done canvassing. We have another date scheduled, which is April 1st. The canvassing is not hard to do. You go out in teams. They give you the verbiage to say. Most people's homes that you go to, you knock on the door and you say what we're here, we're helping clean the voter rolls, and they're like, thank you. Thank you. Good, I'm so glad to hear that. It's encouraging to them to know that there are people that are working towards that. And so if you would like to help, because we need people, there's a sign-up sheet on the table that you signed in on tonight. You got your little name tag. You could sign that, please, and we'll be calling you. So then the next thing I would say is that, and you guys know this, election integrity is at the core of all of our issues. If we don't get that straight, we don't have a chance. So if you feel that way and you have a passion for it, this is some place where instead of just talking about it, you can actually take action, okay? So I would encourage you to do that. I'm sorry, this breathing, I feel like I'm getting so much feedback with breathing. Okay, so next, I am excited to introduce our guest speaker tonight. I'm excited to hear everything he has to say. I love his Gateway Pundit article. Chris Alexander. Chris, would you like to come up?
Sure.
I'll let you stand here and I'll read all about you and let him.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Chris Alexander is one of the founding members of Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, that's called LCAG. The 6 of 12 children from Shreveport, Chris and his family have been active in Louisiana politics for many decades. 12 kids.
Yes.
Amazing mom.
Yes.
After spending 2 years as a citizen advocate at the Louisiana legislature in 2021 and 2022, before forming LCAG, it became clear to Chris that there is a big difference between what many of our Republican legislators are doing there and what they tell their constituents they are doing there. From vaccine mandates to censorship of our speech on the social media to election integrity to the poisonous anti-American ideas being injected into our public schools and so much else. They are globalists, rhino Republicans in our state legislature who are killing our agenda, often in secretive ways that are impossible to detect on a voter scorecard. They want to have their cake and eat it too. No more I agree. We're standing and uniting, no more. LCAG is a legislative advocacy group formed as a response to Chris's personal experience in the legislature. LCAG will expose, remove, and replace these globalist rhinos so that our legislature can become once again the stone wall against federal tyranny that our founders intended to be, and protectors of our individual freedoms and sovereignty. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Thank you for coming.
I just put this down here. That's okay. Thank you. Marina, thank you so much for the warm introduction. I almost was wondering for a second who you were talking about. But thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it. Vicki, thank you for making this possible. And what a blessing it is to be back in Houma. I have such great respect for Lenore and Jeff and this entire group here who stands together for our freedom, which is what y'all are doing. I want to give you a little background about myself. I come from a family of 12 kids in Shreveport, and my first initiation to politics was at the age of 6 when my parents would load us up into my mom's station wagon, all the ones of us who were old enough to walk, and take us around when an election was going on with literature on the best candidate in the race. And they would make us get out of the car and walk the blocks and go up to the doors and introduce ourselves and urge the homeowner to vote for our candidate. And we did that every day and every election from the time I can remember. Between that and ripping my mom's order to rip pro-abortion stickers off the back of people's cars in Shreveport, and my dad, a U.S. Marine, would look at my mom and say, "Flo, well, they're tearing stickers off the back of the car." And says, "Lad, you know I'm not a criminal." And he knew not to say much after that. But anyway, 2 years down there at the legislature, watching citizens go down and urge good legislation that directly affects all of us, and watching these Republican legislators, first of all, often condescend to American citizens who were there to express themselves, and then killing right before us vitally important legislation. From vaccine mandates to the suppression of our speech on social media, to election integrity, to critical race theory being injected into our schools. Republicans are killing our agenda. And then they're coming back home to places like this all over the state and talking to the citizens about what good conservatives they are. They want to have their cake and eat it too. And I got tired of watching that. And Katie looked at me one day, my wife of 22 years, and said, "You need to do something about this." And that's why we founded the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group. And we're going all over the state, and we're building our presence on social media. I'm going on radio shows. I'm going everywhere to talk specifically about our 23 or so Republican rhino legislators who have compromised our sovereignty and are failing to be the bulwarks of protection against the federal government that our founding fathers intended our state legislature to be. And that's what we are all about. How many here think that our federal government is encroaching well beyond its constitutional power? Our legislature is supposed to stand up and say no. We have the sovereignty. The 9th and 10th Amendments of the United States Constitution vest plenary authority in the state legislatures precisely for this reason, because our founding fathers certainly envisioned that there would be times in our history when our federal government would be monstrously tyrannical in abusing our rights, and our legislature is supposed to stand up and say no, and we're not doing it. But there's one here tonight, sitting right in this audience, who I would be absolutely remiss and probably get scolded by Katie if I didn't recognize her. I would do it anyway. But I want to acknowledge Beryl Amade and all that you do. If I had 10 Beryl Amades, I could set a blowtorch and light up the street, every dark street in this state, if I had 10 Beryl Amades. And I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about her, a couple of items of legislation that she presented in the legislature that Republican rhinos killed. But I want y'all to know what we're about and what we do. Before I get into specific legislation, I want to talk a little bit about our election system. Because if we can't trust our votes, it doesn't matter anything else we do. Because even if a good conservative gets a majority of the votes, they manipulate the machines, and somehow, some way, the liberal or the leftist ends up winning. We've got to make sure we are secure in our election system. And I hate to tell you this, because he has fooled many, many people. But our current Secretary of State is not being faithful to the integrity of our vote. And he is right now, for the third time, trying to give Louisiana machine-based voting instead of secure, auditable, hand-marked paper ballots, which they do in France and in other countries, where we can absolutely secure the integrity of our vote. He's trying to get us machines again. And there's not one cybersecurity expert in the world who will not tell you that there's not a voting machine in existence that cannot be manipulated remotely, where your votes can be switched from one candidate to another, and cyber hackers can do it, and they have done it. We cannot go forward with a machine-based voting system in the state anymore, or our vote will not be secure. And I've been asking Secretary Ardoin every opportunity that I get, how are the best cybersecurity experts in the world who testified, one of whom testified right in front of you and said machine-based voting, ballot marking devices can be hacked and manipulated, and it's a serious problem. Why are you not doing anything about that, and why are you pushing again for machines? How many of you are familiar with Dominion voting systems? Have you ever heard of Dominion? Okay. Most Louisianans that I know are skeptical of Dominion voting systems. Yet our Secretary of State, on two separate occasions, once in 2018 and once in 2021, put out a bid to award a $100 million contract, 10-year contract for voting machines to Dominion voting systems. He did it twice, and twice the Louisiana Procurator's Office that oversees everything twice had to order him to suspend that contract because there was suspicion that he was rigging the bid in favor of Dominion. He's tried to do it twice. Twice he's been stopped. Now we're about to put out another RFP number 3, and we'll see what happens. But if you do anything, please put pressure on our Secretary of State and let all of your family and friends know that we don't want machine voting in Louisiana anymore. We must have secure, serialized, hand-marked paper ballots, and any excuse that they give you as to why we can't get that has no merit. If we can't be 100% sure about the integrity of our vote, we have no republic. And there is someone else in the audience here tonight who I happen to have a lot of respect for, who's a current candidate for Secretary of State, and I want to recognize Brandon Trostcliffe here tonight. Very hard worker. Brandon, some of you may not know, okay, give you an idea of the kind of man he is. Several years ago, when Joe Biden was pressuring every business, substantial sized business in the country, to mandate the COVID vaccine on their employees, terrorizing employees across the country with a vaccine that is experimental and that is increasingly, the evidence is coming out more and more, is potentially harmful to the people who take it. And they lied to us about that vaccine, and it is causing problems. Brandon Trosclair had the courage on behalf of his employees, 500 employees I think he has with his grocery stores. He stood up to Joe Biden and said, "You're not doing this to my employees." And he sued him in federal court all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, and he won. And that's the kind of courage. That is the kind of courage that I want to get behind. And I encourage all of you, everywhere you go, say Brandon Trosclair for Secretary of State. Brandon Trosclair for Secretary of State. He's a winner, and he's going to win. So thank you for being here. Someone mentioned a Gateway Pundit article that I wrote a couple of days ago outlining all the things that Secretary Ardoin has done in the last several years in order to ensure that we continue with machines in Louisiana. If you get a chance to read it, just go into the Gateway Pundit, and it's there. It's not long, and I think it'll give you some more insight into where we are currently with our Secretary of State. But Marina's 100% right. If we don't get our vote right, there's no need for me to be standing up here. There's no need for us to do anything. We can all go home because they're just going to manipulate their way to fraudulent victories. Now for a few minutes on specifically what we do in the legislature. It blew my mind when I went down to the state legislature 2 years ago. I'm on my way down there, and I'm thinking, we have all these good, we just had a Republican wave come into the state legislature. Thank you, Lord, we got good conservative Republicans down here now, and we're going to go down here and really win for the people in the state legislature. I'm down there watching, and it stunned me beyond comprehension to watch Rhino Republican after Rhino Republican kill, sometimes in very secretive ways, where you can't really look at it on a voter scorecard because they kill it in what's called committee, and Beryl knows this. Either they don't show up, or they'll show up for the roll call and they'll walk out of the room when they call the vote, so they can say, I had to go to another committee hearing, or I had to go here, or they'll talk in the hallway and secretly. They kill the most important legislation, ladies and gentlemen, before it ever gets to a full vote on the House. And this is not theoretical. This is absolutely important. The first bill I want to talk to you about, it was a bill that Representative Mark Wright brought. I'm pro-life. You might have gathered that. I'm from a family of 12 children. My mom and dad were actively involved in the pro-life movement for many years. My mom founded the first pregnancy referral center in Shreveport. And I think she saved a lot of young, of unborn children. And when we were riding around the back of the station wagon on a Saturday doing some political stuff, and my mom would be in the front seat driving the station wagon, and there'd be a young lady in the front seat with her in the passenger side of the car. And we all knew that the young lady was pregnant, and my mom was trying to counsel her out of walking into an abortion clinic and taking the life of her unborn child. And my mom would sit there for hours and hours talking to these young ladies. And more often than not, she succeeded in preventing the destruction of a human life. And then she would follow through afterwards and make sure that the child was okay. And they would come over to our house with their children after they were born. And my mom walked the walk for a long, long time. She didn't just talk the talk. She died over Christmas at 90. And the last thing that she did in Shreveport before she passed away was she would pray the rosary outside of the abortion clinic in Shreveport. She sat on the sidewalk and prayed the rosary. And that was couple of days before she died, it was pretty sudden. She was 90 when she died, and a few days before she died, but I remember that was one of the last things she was doing, was praying the rosary outside of an abortion clinic at Shreveport at age 90. And so, I miss my mom, but I know she's looking down on us, and I know she's going to help bless our efforts. But anyway, there was a bill down there that was brought by Representative Mark Wright that would have required it to be posted up on the Department of Health and Human Services website. Any vaccine that a citizen may or may not take, if it was derived from fetal embryonic cells, if it was derived, the vaccine in any way from embryonic fetus that had been aborted, the Department of Health and Human Services had to post that publicly and let people who may get that vaccine know. I would want to know if a vaccine that I was thinking about taking had been derived that way, and I wouldn't do it because it would be contrary to my ethical principles. And it was brought before a Republican committee by Representative Mark Wright, and it was killed in committee because 2 Rhino Republicans voted against it. Hinskins and McMath, interestingly enough, 2 Republicans, they had left the committee room when the vote came down, although they were there earlier for the roll call. But they got up and left, and then one more, Fred Mills out of Lafayette, and I'll talk more about him later, voted against it. So it failed in committee 5-3. If those 3 Republicans had voted for it, every vaccine administered in the state of Louisiana, you would have a right to know how it was derived and whether or not it was derived from embryonic stem cell tissue. And that, to me, is unbelievable that 3 Republicans, not Democrats, would kill legislation like that. Representative Eccles brought a bill. Do y'all remember during this the big COVID lockdown and everything, when there were certain doctors who were trying to prescribe early therapeutics like ivermectin and other provable therapies, and they were being hammered and sanctioned by the government for doing that? Representative Eccles, and really bad for them, Representative Eccles brought a bill that would have made it unlawful for the government to take any action against a doctor for exercising his good judgment and prescribing early therapeutics for a vaccine like COVID. You can't touch him anymore. You have to leave him alone. It was brought in there. It went all the way. It passed out of committee in the House, passed the House floor, passed the Senate committee overwhelmingly, gets onto the Senate floor, and Paige Cortez, our Republican Senate president, ran the clock out on it, wouldn't call it for a vote, and it never passed. So right now, if our federal government engages in another act of tyranny and starts mandating vaccines or manufactures another emergency, and we have doctors who want to try to help with that, they will be criminalized again, sanctioned again in Louisiana, retaliated against in Louisiana, because our Republican legislature could not pass a bill to protect those doctors. And that is disgraceful. So remember the name Paige Cortez if he ever runs for another statewide office, because that's not the only thing that he did, but that was serious enough to me. Kathy Edmonston, a great patriot in the legislature, brought a bill that said anytime the Department of Health sends out a notice about anything regarding vaccines or immunizations to anybody in the state, they have to include in that notice the fact that you have a right to exempt from the vaccine and what your legal remedies are if it's not honored. She brought that bill, and that bill also made it all the way to the Senate, and Paige Cortez killed that bill also. And so right now there's a lot of people in Louisiana right now who don't even know that they have a right to refuse experimental vaccine in the state because of our Republican legislature. You have a right to know that the government cannot tell you what to put into your body. And right now, that legislation failed because of our Republican leadership. I want to talk about Beryl Amity's bill. House Bill 531, I remember this so vividly being down there, and it would have shown what is the legal remedy against a school daycare for failing to honor a vaccine exemption, and said that it had to be included in the same section of the law that provides for the exemption itself. Three Republican senators on the committee, Republican Senator Mark Abraham, Senator Robert Mills, and Senator Beth Mizell, and Senator Kirk Talbot, they all voted against that very, very good bill that Representative Amade had brought, and that bill died because of Republicans. Representative Amade also brought a bill. Do y'all know what critical race theory is?
Yes.
What they're teaching our students, it's permeating schools across the country right now, where they're teaching our students to hate the United States Constitution. They're teaching our students that our Constitution is founded upon racism, and our country has to be fundamentally transformed for that reason. Well, parents have a right to know what their kids are being taught in school. At least Representative Amade believes that. She brought a bill that required the actual lesson plans that were being taught in any public school in Louisiana, parents to have access to that information. She also brought a bill that would have required one school board meeting out of the month for any parent to be able to go in and talk about any issue that they wanted to talk about anytime during that one meeting, because these school boards are steadily reducing parental access to information. Oftentimes, they don't want parents to know what's really being taught, what's really going on in these schools. Parents have a right to know. Representative Amade brought a bill that would have created great transparency so that parents would actually know what their kids are being taught in school, and Republicans in our legislature killed that bill. Buddy Mincy, who's a Republican representative out of Livingston, and Bill Wheat out of Hammond, two Republicans, killed both of those bills on the House floor. Republicans, because they're in bed with the school boards and the teachers' unions. Republicans. And then they go back home to their constituents in Hammond and Livingston, talk about what good patriots they are. Well, Buddy Mincy is going to be running for the state senate over there, and he has a date with the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, my group.
So is we.
Yes, indeed. Probably the most important bill, this is the last bill of Representative Amade's that I'm going to talk about. This is a bill that would have created in Louisiana law what's called medical autonomy, where our government cannot ever again mandate or attempt to mandate any medical procedure, whether it's a vaccine or anything else, on Louisiana citizens. After this draconian lockdown we had, after all this medical tyranny with our governor of the Louisiana Department of Health, it was probably the most important bill of the whole legislature. 4 Republicans killed that bill in committee. So now, whenever we go through another pandemic, we do not have the protection to say, you cannot force anything on me anymore, because of Republicans in our legislature. This is the reason why we exist. This is why we're going around the state specifically talking about these issues. And I want to say, just because, even if the Republicans who are killing this important legislation are not from your area, what they do there still affects all of you. What they do in the Capitol affects people, all of us statewide. So please remember that. Unfortunately.
Chris, do you have the names of those 4?
Yes, the ones who killed that bill was Republican chairman of the committee, Larry Bagley, Republican Representative Thomas Presley, Republican Representative Christopher Turner, and Republican Representative Wayne McCann. If they had voted for that critically important medical autonomy bill, it would have passed out of the House committee 9-7, would have gone to the full House floor, and probably would have passed there. Beryl fought courageously for that bill, and we need to bring it again. We need to bring it again once my group cleans some of these people out of there. And then once that happens, we're going to pass it. It's going to pass. How many of y'all believe that the federal government is now colluding on a broad scale to suppress our speech? Colluding with big tech. It's proven now in Jeff Landry's lawsuit. Senator Jay Morris brought a bill that would have allowed the Attorney General to sue big tech and any citizen to sue big tech for punitive damages and compensatory damages anytime they took action to suppress our speech in any form. Jay Morris is sitting before the House Commerce Committee. Representative Paula Davis, Republican from Baton Rouge, where I'm from, is on that committee. And she made sure that there wasn't even a quorum there so they could vote on that. That was the second most important bill of the whole session. Would have allowed a cause of action for you for having your speech crushed on social media. And Paula Davis, who was probably taking orders from somebody higher up than her, maybe the Speaker of the House, Clay Shack-Snyder, who has done more to sabotage our agenda, a Republican, than anybody else. And Jay Morris sits there in front of that committee and says, I've been in this body for 10 years, and I have never had a situation where you don't even have the courtesy to bring enough people to the committee hearing to vote on legislation. And we're not talking about naming a building after someone. We're talking about the fact that our speech is being crushed in this country, and this would have protected Louisiana citizens from that, and a Republican chairman, Paula Davis, killed that legislation. One of the biggest issues we face in this country is the collusion between the federal government and private entities like Google and Facebook and YouTube that are killing our speech. This bill would have protected us, and a Republican killed it. Paula Davis, remember that name. Another election integrity bill, 2020 election. Mark Zuckerberg is putting hundreds of millions of dollars into these swing states, into the pockets of these election officials in these swing states. Bought the election for Joe Biden in those critical swing states because of all this private money that's going into the pockets of these election officials and manipulating the votes, rigging the system for Joe Biden. And don't tell me that didn't have a lot to do with why he won that race. So a great patriot in the legislature, Blake Miguez, brings a bill that would have prohibited any private money from going to any election official, whether it's a registrar of voter or secretary of state, for the purposes of conducting an election. No more dark money in our elections. Cannot happen here anymore, and it would have protected the integrity of our system. Gets all the way into the Senate, and again, it's killed in the Senate by Paige Cortez with the help of other Republican rhinos in the Senate who were covering for him and protecting him. So right now, there's nothing in Louisiana that prevents dark money being unloaded into the coffers of our election officials in order to manipulate an election because of Republicans, not Democrats. The last one I'm going to tell you about, and then I'm going to talk to you about one other issue more generally, but if this does not anger you and motivate you, I'm not sure what will. Governor John Bel Edwards, in a sweeping tyrannical act, wanted to mandate the COVID vaccine for every child in Louisiana in a public school in order to allow them to attend school in person. First of all, it's an experimental vaccine. You shouldn't be mandating it at all. Secondly, there's evidence that's coming out that it's harmful. And thirdly, even if it wasn't, our children are 99.9% immune from COVID. COVID poses no threat to them. But John Bell Edwards is in bed with Big Pharma, and he pressure. He ordered our students, if you want to go to school, you're going to take this vaccine. We had an opportunity in the state legislature to stand up to him and say, you're not doing this to our children. It gets before the Senate committee, which is chaired by Fred Mills, a pharmacist, Republican pharmacist out of Lafayette. Rogers Pope is also on that committee. And they sit up there. Liz Murrow testified that day about the harmful effects this vaccine had on her son. Robert Kennedy was here talking about the dangers of this vaccine. And Robert Malone, who's a world-renowned immunologist, was there talking about this. Jeff Landry testified in front of the Senate committee. All the evidence was there. Rogers Pope, the Republican, didn't even show up for the vote. And Fred Mills voted against it. It failed a bill that would have prohibited an administrative act that will mandate that our children receive the COVID vaccine in order to go to school, was killed 5-3 in the Republican legislature, and it would have passed if these two, one of them had been there and voted for it and the other one hadn't voted against it. This goes right to the heart of our children and protecting our children. But you know what happened after that? People like you all over this state stood up and, excuse my language, started raising holy hell because it was about our children. And the governor backed down because of you, not because our legislature stood up for you or for us. These things, ladies and gentlemen, are the kind of things that we're fighting against in the legislature. And we're exposing these people one by one. I'm going to tell you one final thing to give you an idea of what we've done. Jeremy Lacombe was an entrenched state representative over in West Baton Rouge, Feliciana, in that area. He's running for the Senate to fill a vacant Senate seat, and he is, to say that he is not faithful to the citizens of Louisiana and faithful to the Constitution is an understatement. But he was an entrenched incumbent over there. Nobody thought he could lose. But Caleb Kleinpeter ran against him and went to every door. We endorsed Caleb Kleinpeter all over the district, everywhere, made phone calls. His team did one way. And guess what? Caleb Kleinpeter had the audacity to go to those doors and tell the citizens of that district what Jeremy Lacombe was actually doing in the legislature. Vote after vote after vote after vote, standing against us, hurting our agenda. And Caleb Kleinpeter not only won that big state Senate seat over there, but he trounced him in a primary. And Caleb Kleinpeter is going to be the new state senator over there. It's a very, very important position. It could be a bellwether. All we have to do is tell the truth and make sure that all the voters in Louisiana in different areas know what their legislators are actually doing in there and not what they're telling them they're doing. And we are going to take this state back, and we're going to make it the bulwark of sovereignty under the 9th and 10th Amendments of the Constitution that it is designed to be. These Republicans are not standing up for our freedom. They're not standing up for our sovereignty, and I've had enough of it. And it's time to take our legislature back. Because believe me, our federal government is going to come after you again and again and again. It's not over. And the only protection we have is right there in Baton Rouge, in our capital. And someone said here earlier that they're not here to be mean to people. Well, I'm not going to be mean to people either, but I am certainly going to tell the truth. And 23 Republicans in our legislature right now have disqualified themselves from further public service in Louisiana because the extent to which they have betrayed your interests and betrayed the Constitution of the United States. And that's what we're going about doing. I would encourage y'all to go on our website, www.lacag.org, find out more about what we're doing. Again, I'm going everywhere, and we are publishing these votes to the constituents in these districts, and we're making sure that they all know what these Republicans are doing. I don't go out to eat with these people. I mean, I like to have fun, but I don't socialize with these Republican rhinos. I'm civil, I'm nice, but the policy of my organization is that we don't want to become too friendly with any of these people because we have a job to do. And first of all, we don't want to run the risk of becoming in any way corrupted. And number two, when you become friends with someone, it makes it a lot harder to expose them. And so we're not friends. We're not going to become friends with him. We're going to make sure that all the people in Louisiana understand and know what they're doing, and we're going to return our legislature to the citizens. Last thing, to be a member of LACAG, and for me to do all this that I'm doing, our membership is $22 a month for your freedom. And I promise you, I'm going to fight with everything that is in me everywhere to make sure that we have the kind of representation in our legislature that Beryl Amity represents. And we can have a lot more Beryl Amities in there. They're out there, but we have to work and expose the ones that are in there now and work to get the other ones in. And with your help, we can do it. $22 a month. I promise you, you'll sleep better at night doing it. www.lacag.org. I want to thank you all so much for having me tonight to come speak to you. Now let's go win. Thank you. Yeah. If anybody has a question, I'd be glad to try to answer. Yeah.
Yeah, as far as exposure and it being made public, I know they hide it so it's not as clear cut to say it's on a voter scorecard because they remove themselves from that. But I'm just looking for a way in which that being made public and exposed can be put out there.
Okay, repeat the question.
Okay. The question was what is the best way to make sure that these votes in committee, these little secret maneuvers that they do to kill vitally important legislation, what do we do to get it out there? The first thing we're doing is building a very, very broad social media presence. At this point, we have the ability to press a button and our communications go to thousands and thousands of people all over the state of Louisiana. The second, in our email system, we also post broadly on Facebook. This representative did this on this bill. This is why it's important. You need to always remember this. And share everywhere. I also am going all over the state of Louisiana to talk about these issues. And fortunately, the representatives that you have here generally are pretty good, for the most part, the Republicans. They're not. The Beryl Amity. Tanner, there's one. There's one, I have to tell you, Mike Fessy, Beryl Amity, but I have to tell you, there's one that you need to know about, and because he's not good. I don't even know him, it's not personal, but there's a representative named Tanner McGee, who serves in the state legislature, who was early on, pushing for the COVID vaccine to be made mandatory and pushing other draconian measures in conjunction with John Bell Edwards, and the people stood up and he backed down. But he's not a conservative patriot, and he's part of the reason why we're in the situation that we're in. Anybody who runs against him will have our full and total support. But hats off to Beryl Andre, hats off to Mike Vesey, and hats off to this organization, because y'all are outstanding.
You want another question?
Yeah.
Debbie, did you have a question?
It's about the election integrity and the voting machines. My understanding was that Kyle Ordwin did the voting commission, that was all set up, and that they decided, according to what Brandon told me earlier this week, they decided from the voting commission that it would be a verifiable hand-marked ballot system that would be purchased. That was the whole purpose of getting the voting commission formed, was to get input on what kind of system would be bought. Why is he not taking the advice of the voting commission?
Well, I think he's not taking the advice of the voting commission. My own suspicion is I believe that he is either philosophically doesn't believe we should have secure hand-marked paper ballots, or is compromised. And I don't know which one it is. But I know that early on, a lot of us believed in Kyle Ordwin. A lot of us believed that he was trying to do the right thing and secure our vote. And unfortunately, we've been very, very disappointed at this point. Because right now, there's a more than reasonable possibility that we're going to end up with ballot marking devices, which is a machine-based way of casting your vote. And those machines can be manipulated. They can be hacked remotely. In fact, I guarantee you there are probably bad actors right now sitting at a computer screen finalizing the best way to do the electronic steal. We got to understand we can't go with machines. In fact, I think they're probably designed to cheat. And we just can't have it. So you need to put a lot of pressure on Secretary Ordwin.
How?
How?
You need to constantly call his office, constantly email him, constantly do that. And also there's evidence coming out that Secretary Ordwin may actually have been engaged in censorship of speech of people who oppose his position on election integrity. And that is just now starting to come out. There was an article in the Gateway Pundit on that. But when government officials start engaging in censorship of our speech, there's nothing more unconstitutional than that.
That's on our Facebook page.
Oh, it is? Yeah.
I posted it today.
Yeah. So anyway, I just want to close by saying I appreciate y'all having me here tonight. Please help us. Yeah.
One question, sir. I spoke with our registrar of voters about the Dominican machines. Was surprised to be told that they do have them. However, I was assured that they were purchased. Terrebonne Parish had purchased their machines and that they were not connected to anything outside of the parish system.
That's a great point, sir. And what the cyber experts say, which you'll never hear Kyle Ordwin say, I promise you, is that they don't have to be connected to the internet. They can be hacked remotely whether or not they're connected to the internet. And Alex Haldeman has said that. He actually has hacked into machines. They do not have to have internet connection. I'm not a cybersecurity expert, never played one on TV, but I certainly listen to what these guys say, and sophisticated bad actors can hack into our voting system whether or not it's connected to the internet, and that's a fact. And it may be, your registrar of voters here may legitimately not know that because they listen to what the Secretary of State says, but everybody needs to know that they don't have to be connected to the internet to be hacked.
Okay, if it's in a building with Wi-Fi, will they have to connect? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
It's just like we know we will vote at the
Repeat.
He said if there's a building with Wi-Fi in it, would that be connection? Yes, sir. That's a connection right there. So we cannot play around with this. I'm asking Secretary Ardwin to do one thing. You can ask him to do this too, and I'm going to relentlessly ask him to do this. If these machines cannot be hacked, and he has said publicly before, and I've documented it, and it's recorded, he has said publicly before that he will allow experts to test the machines. So I'm going to ask him if he will allow Mr. Apple or Mr. Haldeman or 2 or 3 of the other, what they call white hat hackers, the ones who are testing it for our good to see if it can be manipulated, to do a comprehensive forensic evaluation on any voting machine that he's proposing to use in Louisiana before we purchase them, and see if they can hack into the machines. And if they can't, we'll all be satisfied. But prove to us that our vote is safe. Prove to us that these machines are safe. Do y'all think that Secretary Ardwin is going to agree to allow that to happen? Well,
So, is this decision going to be made while he's still in office, or after the election?
my understanding is it's supposed to happen while he's still there. Brandon, when is the Secretary of State's election?
It's in October.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come up here if you don't mind.
So
Yeah,
the
Brandon.
whole point with the
you come up
machines
here?
being, I don't want to steal Chris's thunder. Sorry.
And we have plenty of time.
The whole point with the machines, to answer your question, being connected to the internet, none of that matters. I was telling my wife when we were driving over here, it's who is counting your vote. The whole thing behind our campaign is putting the power of the people, putting the power back to the people. So who's counting your vote? And I was playing a little trick with her. What number's in my head? 1 or 2? 1. I said, nope, you're wrong. Just 2. Nope, she said, you're wrong. Well, what number's in my head? Well, you're wrong, before she even answers. Because it doesn't matter. So Kyle Ardwin cannot give permission to anybody to look in those machines because it's proprietary information for Dominion, ESNS. It doesn't matter what the vendor is. That's what it said. It doesn't matter if it's connected to the internet or not. That thumb drive is uploaded to the Secretary of State's office, which is uploaded to Dominion. So who's counting your votes? The whole thing behind our campaign and the hand-marked paper ballots is putting the power back to the people, to where Louisiana's voters are going to be counted by Louisianians. That's the whole point there.
And I will say this, because as a lawyer, I can tell you that these election companies will say, no, that's all proprietary information. You don't get to get into the machine. But do you know who stood up in front of a Republican Women's Committee and said, oh no, we're going to get the proprietary codes. We're going to make sure that these machines are safe. We're going to get it. Cal Ardwin stood up and said that to people and then never followed through with it. In fact, shortly thereafter was when his effort to award the $100 million contract to Dominion was shut down in Louisiana for the first time, and then it happened again later. So now we're on number 3. So now is the time to put major pressure on Kyle Ardwin to do what we need him to do, because the machines aren't safe. They're just not. And I want to say, the first time I ever testified down at the legislature, a long time ago, before I formed LeCAG, I was down there and I was sitting right next to Lenore Whitney. And it was like, I'd never done anything like this before. And I remember thinking, Lenore just looked like she just knew exactly what was going on down there, and I'm sitting there stunned that these Republican legislators are doing this. She's just rolling right through it, you know, and standing up. And I was so stunned, I kind of had to recover from it. But we have a lot of work to do. We're this close to losing our freedom in this country and in this state. We have got to do our work in the legislature. And I can tell you there's no advocacy organization in Louisiana that's doing what we're doing and watching what these Republicans are doing on these committees. Not one, and exposing them one by one. And we're going to replace them, and we're going to have some protection in this state. And I'm going everywhere. Please support us. Yes, ma'am.
How many Democrats are on these committees?
It's an interesting question.
Can you rephrase?
The lady asked how many.
How are they voting?
Every committee in the legislature now is majority Republican, because we have a 2/3 majority in one house and a supermajority in the other. There are Democrats who serve on those committees. Yes, ma'am. And the Democrats are always going to vote exactly the way you would expect them to vote, which is why we're focused on the 23 Republicans.
I was wondering why you were focusing.
Yes, ma'am. If all the Republicans honored the Constitution and protected your freedom, this state would be much different. But they get in there and they become compromised to big special interests, big money donors, and they betray the citizens of Louisiana, the people who put them there. And so these.
It used to be that we would vote like Democrat or Republican according to what they were about.
That's exactly right.
A long time ago.
That's exactly right.
And now we vote according to your beliefs.
That's right. And you know, I can promise you that I'm the least favorite political advocate in Louisiana of these rhino Republicans, the least favorite one of them. In fact, I'm sure that there probably will be establishment Republican organizations that probably don't want me to go speak to their groups and probably won't invite me to go speak to them. But guess what? We're going to knock and knock and knock and knock. I'm not going to beat the door down because I don't want to get arrested for criminal trespassing or for, you know, harming any public property. But I'm telling you, we're going to keep at it and keep at it and keep at it. Because my dad always said, father of 12, he said, 1 foot, he used to tell us this in the morning when he'd get us out of bed, the U.S. Marine, my dad. And then I'm sitting down. He'd say, boys, just remember, there are going to be times in your life when it's hard to put 1 foot in front of the other. Times in your life when you can barely move. For whatever reason, it's just hard to go. 1 foot in front of the other, 1 inch at a time, always moving forward no matter how you feel. Always moving forward. And together we can win because we are in the majority. We're in the majority. And if we stand together, we can win. And I intend to win.
Thank you, Chris, so much. I would just, this was phenomenal. It's on our Facebook page live if you want to go back and listen to it, or if you want to share it with someone. We may try to put it on YouTube too. Last time we put something on YouTube, it got taken down. But I just want to reiterate what you say. We are the majority. We just need to unite. You have friends, you have family at home that are not here, that feel the same way you do, and they're looking for some place to connect. That's what we want to do in LeCat. I mean, Debbie, you want to say something? But definitely, I mean, $22 a month for what you're doing is amazing. Yes.
Well, it enables me. This can be a full-time job, and I'm not, you know, I was a lawyer for 20 years, and, you know, if I really want to be able to do this full-time for my country, for my state, and I have to have the resources to do it. So if everybody that I talk to gets on www.lacag.org and signs up for $22 a month, I, with your help, am going to storm that Capitol, and we're going to return this state to you.
Yay.
Chris, I just want to say that I've been a member since you started. But also, I want to give a plug for We the People and our legislative committee. I feel like this is a good time to recruit some more people to help with that. It is difficult sometimes to either be there in the Capitol or watching some of these committee meetings online because you think you know how things are going to go and you think you know how people are going to vote, and then it's very disappointing when they don't go the way that you think they're going to go. And I was following you, Chris, because I lived through that last year trying to keep up with going through all the legislative stuff. but I'm going to be depending on you because during session, I post all that stuff on the We the People page of Facebook to, what?
She's our legislative chair.
Oh,
Come up here.
oh.
Come up here. Come up
Debbie's
here.
our legislative chair.
Well, whatever. Okay, I'm Debbie Melvin,
You are the
and
legislative chair.
I'm the legislative chair, that committee of We the People. And so once the session starts, I would appreciate very much if y'all would watch those posts that I make about bills. And John Nakan has agreed to help me this time, so we're going to be our team. But y'all, look, we need some more people. This is a big job, and there's lots of committees, the House committees, the Senate committees, and just knowing what's coming before. Right now, I think as of yesterday, there's like 27 House bills filed and maybe 15 or so in the Senate, so staying on top of that. But what I'll be doing on the Facebook page, if y'all will watch for that, is for you to respond. If I say, this bill is coming up, I'll give you a link where you can go and read it for yourself, but I'll give you a brief summary of it. I'll give you the names and email addresses of all the people that are on each of those committees. So if something is coming before a committee, you can write those committee members, and I don't care if they're my representative or not. We write to all of them and let our voices be heard, because they look at that. They do, and I know it's cumbersome sometimes, and I'm not the best at figuring out, shortcuts and ways to do this, but I'll try. I'm trying to do my best, and if you have any ideas of the way to streamline it, I'm definitely open to that. But if anyone else could just come alongside John and me and serve on this committee, I would surely appreciate it.
So I would bet 100% of the people in here are looking for, what can I do? I mean, I heard some guys say it when you walked in. We're ready to do something. And so this is a call to action. And I always say, it's not necessarily glamorous. Writing emails or calling somebody and bugging them is not the most glamorous thing we can do. But every single phone call, every single email makes a difference. It's like chipping away at a brick wall. And if everybody's chipping one brick at a time, it's going down. So, and when she's talking about the Senate committee and all this legislative talk, if you're not familiar with it, trust me, once you get in there and start looking around and listening, you're going to get to know it, you're going to understand it, and it's not going to be foreign to you, and it's not going to be intimidating anymore. So you just got to start somewhere. And Debbie does an amazing job. Thank you, Debbie.
Okay, I think we're going to close up tonight. Y'all can hang around for a little while, and maybe if Chris is going to be here for a little while asking some questions or whatever.
There's free yard signs.
Yes, okay, thank you, Kate. There's free We the People yard signs back there if y'all want to take one home and put it in your yard. And then also we have t-shirts for sale and cups and all. And like Chris, we're very judicious with the money that you donate to us, and we make sure that we use it in very wise ways. Yes, Shannon.
I'm sorry. Can I say something on this? I put a little packet in the back. I did a presentation on social emotional learning, which ties to equity, diversity, inclusion, and which ties to critical race theory. There's a little packet back there. I have 8 of them on that red, there we go, on that red tabletop that has information from a presentation I gave.
And who are you?
I'm Shanna, and I am on the education committee.
All right, I think is that everything? Okay, yes.
Can we get the candidate for the Secretary of State up there to say a few words?
Sure.
See why we wouldn't? I mean, he's here. Let's hear what he's got to say.
It was an awesome idea. Yes. And then before he talks, I just want to say, no, come on, I'm not short. Please sign up as you leave to help us canvass Terrebonne Parish on April Fool's Day. That's an easy one to remember, April Fool's Day. And if you know someone who's like-minded, grab them and come too, please.
Thank you so much. I'll be as quick as possible. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I was over in Lafourche at their RPEG meeting, and I heard that the people was getting together, and I love coming down to Houma. Always such great hospitality here. But I'm really quick. So four points. So we got the machines, which we've already talked about in depth tonight. What that Chris had spoke about. We're going to get rid of the machines. We want hand-marked paper ballots. We know that those machines can be and have been manipulated. That's the first problem. The second problem that we're going to address is our registration. We have over 700,000 inactive and ineligible voters on our voter rolls. That is the ammunition to the machine to the guns, which I call it the machines, the guns. That's the ammunition to those machines. We're going to clean up the voter rolls, and we're going to have the registration done in all 64 parishes. Currently, that's the way it's supposed to be done, written in our Constitution. But our Secretary of State is outsourcing our registration. It goes from the Registrar of Voters to the Secretary of State. That is being outsourced to Indiana by a third party called Civics. Our Secretary of State just put together January 23rd recommendations and amendments to our Constitution. Now he's wanting to make it a law to where all the registration is done in the Secretary of State's office, so he can officially make it, outsource it to Indiana. So that's the second problem. We're going to do all the registration right here in our parishes. The third thing is, and we've talked about it, you talked about it briefly here, about the censorship. There was a video posted yesterday. Kyle stated that the thing that he is most proud of in the last 6 years as our Secretary of State was being in charge of and eliminating, or trying to eliminate the censorshiping Americans and taking your First Amendment rights away. And so what his number one accomplishment as our Secretary of State is as chairman of the National Association of Secretary of States and the co-chair of the cybersecurity infrastructure system, is silencing Americans. I don't want to be any part of the National Association of Secretary of State's cybersecurity committees or anything like that. And then the third thing is the fourth thing we talked about was the bid rating. So you're correct, in 2018 and in 2021, those RFPs were supposedly written by Dominion and challenged and revoked by our governor and revoked by our legislation. So we're going to get rid of that. We're going to run a transparent and honest State Department. I want to implement the Ohio checkbook system where y'all see every single check and every single dollar that we spend. You'll be able to see that. Again, and it's all about restoring the power back to the people and restoring trust in our elections, and that's what we're all about. So thank you for your time tonight. My background. So I'm a business guy. I'm from just up the road in Gonzales, Louisiana, born and raised there. I'm in the grocery business. I currently have 13 stores, employ about 450 folks. We're in the top 50 largest companies in the Baton Rouge market. Did a little over $86 million in revenue last year. So that's my background. I'm also in the local RPEC back home. I'm elected to the State Central Committee of the LAGOP here, and I interned at the Republican National Committee in Washington, D.C. I interned at the Heritage Institute. So I've always been involved since a young man in my local community. I'd like to think that I take after my grandfather. He was a mayor of a little small town called Letcher. He was mayor and alderman for 32 years, and he never took a salary. Never took a salary because he loved his community, and that's what it's about. Is loving your community. But he loved that little town. He took offense to being called a politician. He hated being called a politician. He was a true public servant. So, you can follow me. You can learn more about me because I don't want to take up too much time. You can go to letsgobrandon.net. That's GEAUX. Letsgobrandon.net.
And you won't see a picture of Joe Biden.
You won't see a picture, but you can follow me on there. We're trying to put our schedule there. You can request yard signs in there. You can donate on there. All the above. But letsgobrandon.net. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
How are you getting taken off the voter roll if you don't vote at a certain time or if you die, right? Am I wrong on that?
what the law states, she asked, how do you get taken off the voter rolls? Well, the current law states if you don't vote in 2 federal cycles that you can be removed. But we have folks that are 140 years old still on the voter rolls. We have people that haven't voted in 20, 30 years. Well, you're supposed to be taken off when you die as well. And in all fairness and all honesty, we don't have a lot of quote-unquote dead voters.
Only Democrats.
That's not the problem. The problem is you have a lot of ineligible folks when they move. So we have it in my hometown in Ascension. We have folks that moved out years ago that went to Hawaii, but somehow they never miss an election. They should have been removed off the voter roll. So,
Brenda, will you take a minute and tell just a little story about your federal lawsuit on the vaccine?
Yeah.
Because I think that's important.
yeah, I do want to be conscientious of everybody's time, so I apologize if I'm going really quick. But so talking about the vaccine mandate. So Joe Biden announced 2 years ago that any employer that had over 100 employees, that we had to force them to take the vaccine. If they didn't want to take the vaccine, we had to fire them. And so I thought thousands upon thousands of business owners across the country would be lining up to file suit. And ended up being one of 6 business owners across the country. You also had 26 attorney generals, Republican attorney generals, file suit. But my suit, 16, 17 companies, time, BST Holdings, we were the first to file in federal court. We immediately got an injunction. We filed on Thursday morning, the first ones to file in federal court. And on Saturday, I was teaching my 2 kids how to deer hunt. And my phone started blowing up. We got a permanent injunction from the 5th Circuit, which is across the entire country. And so from there, we just kept fighting. We went all the way to the Supreme Court in Washington last year, and we won 6-3. And we saved, it's estimated, somewhere between 80 and 100 million jobs across the United States. So very, very proud. Very, very proud of that. Humbled. It was an honor to do that and stand up for Americans. But the bottom line is whether you're for or against the vaccine is Joe Biden didn't belong in my business, and I don't belong in the medical decisions of my teammates and my employees. And that's what it was all about. It was massive government overreach. That's what it was. And so, anyway, when I travel, I've been traveling all over and doing this, and I'm usually pretty good at this speech. I've done it 30 or 40 times, but I have my beautiful wife here for the first time. So my wife of 16 years, so she makes me a little nervous sometimes. But when I go around talking to people I tell them the facts, and I always tell them, look, don't believe everything that I just say. Go do your research. Go do your research. There's plenty of research out there, everything that I say. But I try to fire people up to be involved. And we the people here down at home at the Bayou chapter, they quote Ronald Reagan a lot. And look, I'm kind of a nerd. I love Ronald Reagan. I watch his videos at night. But one of the things that he says, and he said it in 1964, is that the communists are trying to take over our country without firing a shot. And they're going to do it through appeasement and apathy. People, in general speaking, they got their head in the sand. They don't care. Folks, we have to stand up together as a people and say enough is enough. We're not taking this anymore. Enough is enough. Ronald Reagan also says when the people do very little, usually the elected do too much. And they proved time and time and time. And that was in 1964. Well, these politicians have proven Ronald Reagan to be right time and time and time again. And so I appreciate everybody. Always a great turnout over here in Homeland. There's a lot of people always involved out here. I want to encourage you to stay involved. Keep having the meetings. Keep doing the canvassing. Keep encouraging your neighbor. Keep telling the facts. Chris, keep holding these politicians accountable. Because enough is enough. Yeah. My favorite justice on the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, says, stand up for what's right, even if it means standing up alone. Right. And that's what we have to do. We have to stand up and fight for our rights. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's just for what it's worth. If you Google search Let's Go Brandon, there's a lot of trash. It's Let's Go, like Louisiana.
GEAUX, correct. I don't subscribe to using the profanity of FJB and that. Let's Go Brandon, GAUX. It means, in my interpretation, is we're going to stand up against big government overreach, and that's what I'm all about. Again, it's .net. Yes, .net. Let's Go Brandon.net, GAUX. anything else. Thank you so much for having me. I've been 4 or 5 times down here to Houma, and I'm gonna come back at least 4 or 5 more times. I love it.
Thank you so much. I would just say after tonight, it's obvious that we are awake. We're tired of our Constitution being trampled on. And I think more patriots, like Let's Go Brandon, are waking up and they're going to run. And I think we need to be there to support them. Chris, thank you for what you're doing. And I would like to also introduce someone. Jason Bergeron is here. Can you stand, please? And can you tell him what you're running for?
How you doing? Jason Bergeron, born and raised, Terrebonne Parish. I love this parish with all my heart. I don't want to take up too much time either, so, and I'll be here to talk after. But same things I'm going to say tonight. I'm a firm believer in being a public servant. I'm a business owner, born and raised, built everything on my own hands, and I think it's time for us to take back where politicians are public servants, and I'm here to serve, and I want to be the next parish president of Terrebonne Parish. And so I'm officially running. My website is voteforjason.com, and all I ask you to do is do what the website says, and that's Vote for Jason. So I'm glad to talk after. Thank y'all for letting me introduce myself, and I look forward to being the next parish president.
Okay, I would ask you one question. This is a question our organization asks everybody. How do you feel about the Constitution and following it?
I fully support it, and I believe every conservative value that you've talked about tonight, I fully believe in that. And again, I don't have all the answers, but I'm gonna bring the right people together and hire smart people. And my slogan is to move Terrebonne forward, because that's what I want to do.
All right, thank you. Thank y'all so much for coming. Come back and sign up for something. Get involved.